Good afternoon, West and the world. Welcome to the inaugural review video for this spring 2014 semester. Following our discussion this morning, broadly ranged or broadly titled, History, the World, and the West. As I've explained before, these videos will be posted after each and every one of our lectures to provide you a quick summary, usually in about 3 to 5 minutes, of the major thematic elements of the course, and to help you get a little bit of a preview of how these things contribute to topics that will follow in the days ahead. This morning, our discussion was especially wide-ranging, as we spent time discussing both sort of historical methodology, defining basic terms that we plan to be using on a regular basis, and talked a little bit about the origins of Western civilization prior to the year 1500. You'll recall, undoubtedly, that our conversation began with a discussion of the uses of studying history and how that is best accomplished. We said, in brief, that history is a subject that proves to be surprisingly pervasive, that even in the lives of people who may or may not decide in their later life whether or not to invade Russia in the wintertime, we still encounter the past in the way that we live our lives, in the stories we tell, in the ways we communicate with other people. But professionally speaking, the practice of history, we learned, has some very specific characteristics about it, that it springs from the study of source texts, of primary source material, like the record of the court case of Abina, about which you read just a little bit prior to our first class meeting. We learned about this idea of the staircase of voices, this process by which historians interpret the material of the past to determine what its ultimate significance may be, to try to offer us the fullest picture possible of the material that comes down to us, what to make of the raw data of court cases and letters and books that have been published out of the past. Then, after we discussed these basic ideas, we turned our attention to understanding what we mean when we refer to the West. And we said that when we talk about the West, what we usually mean is not the geographic direction, not even one particular or one narrowly defined region, but rather more of a cultural identity, a set of shared values and ideas that begin or have many of their origins in this part of the world, in Western Europe, but that today have spread to places like the United States and Canada, to Australia and New Zealand, and of course, in some ways, even into places like East Asia. Western values, Western ideas, we learned, seem to have a fairly wide-ranging influence regardless of geographical questions. And then we turned, very briefly and in summary form, to some origins of Western civilization prior to the year 1500, our sort of official launching point. We said that there are 4 of great significance. There is the civilization of Mesopotamia, or the Fertile Crescent, where sedentary agriculture is first practiced, making the transition some 8,000 to 10,000 years ago from people who practice hunting and gathering as a mode of economic existence to people who live together in higher densities, making possible urban civilization, the hierarchy of social class, specialization in economic practice, and a variety of other major transformations. We said that the second of the touch points is ancient Greece, which gives us many of the sort of bedrock ideas out of philosophy, literature, and other fields of study that are going to have a durable, lasting influence on Western culture. Number 3 was the civilization of ancient Rome, which, although it may have lacked for its own sort of original ideas, did much over the course of 5 or 6 centuries to stabilize the Mediterranean basin and its surrounding territories, to make possible the dispersal of ideas that had many of which had originated in Greek civilization. Rome, we said, becomes the aspiration of generations that follow. That for more than 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, The greatest preoccupation of European political rulers and authorities is to try to recreate, to rebirth this ancient Roman Empire. The last of the touch points that we discussed was, of course, the Middle Ages, the time period that spans the years between the fall of Rome and the starting point of our course, the year 1500. We're talking, of course, about a period of nearly 1,000 years, but we said it shares some common characteristics around its organization of social classes: those who work, those who fight, those who pray. That system, we said, is based on the assumption of a surplus of labor and a scarcity of land. But when this equation is upset by the Black Death of 1347 and in the years that follow, Europe is in a position to begin asking new questions, to considering new ways of living, to begin altering its fundamental structures. Much of that is where we will be turning our attention on Thursday as we begin to think about the Italian Renaissance and the transformations that it brings. See you then.